Welcome back. Well, it finally happened. The garrison-ish content has finally been added to the alpha. Now, I have access to the alpha, and I haven't really gone into it because I've been waiting for this, because I knew it was coming. The reason why I'm doing this video now is because Watcher has responded to the concerns that have been expressed about the garrison-ish content that has been revealed. And I want to preface this by saying I am not the norm when it comes to the vocal minority. I don't really care about the garrisons all that much. And I will explain why in a little bit. But first, let's see what Watcher has to say, okay? Before I forget, there is a link in the description below for a person that played through what is in the alpha. I will be doing so myself, but this is nicely done so you get an idea of what's there now, but keep in mind that it's alpha. And all right, let's do this. This is what Watcher had to say in his first post addressing these issues. I completely understand the concerns. What you're currently seeing in alpha are bits and pieces of a system that is still coming together, untuned and often even inconsistent between classes without additional context. And as a result, there's also a fair bit of misinformation floating around. For example, the cap on active champions followers is 6, not 20. We haven't published a full explanation of the system because we're still working out a few of the details. That's the nature of alpha. And of course, in the absence of information, seeing an interface that looks a lot like a reskinned version of what you're used to in Draenor, garrisons, followers, which goes to champions, garrison resources, which leads to order resources, etc., it's easy to assume that this is just a continuation of the old system. I'd like to at least shed light on some of our goals and philosophies, and the core ways in which class order missions in Legion are going to be very different from garrison missions in Warlords. The mission system in Warlords was conceived as a core part of the garrison experience and a self-contained progression that offered rewards that competed with other traditional content. We approached Legion unsure whether there would be any continuation of mission gameplay at all. Now, I want to specify something here and make this very, very clear. When he said we approached Legion, keep in mind when they approached Legion, okay? They approached Legion while we were in Pandoria. So that is when they should have been scoping this out. They probably dived way into Legion while we were just experiencing Draenor. So there's no way when they started making Legion that they would know or could know how it would all play out. So I absolutely believe that sentence, okay? So I think that it's, okay, I'm not going to say I think it is. It absolutely is unfair to use a sentence like that and say, well, look what you did, blah, 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 blah. No, look at when they first started working on Legion, okay? Let's continue on. We focused instead on the artifact and class order systems, creating traditional content to provide the experience of forming a band of the greatest champions of your class to combat the Legion, with an eye towards class identity and replayability. We want your journey through the Broken Isles to feel meaningfully different in at least a few key ways, depending on whether you're a mage, a warrior, a demon hunter, etc. Once we had the backbone of our order systems in place, a campaign quest arc wherein you recruit champions to aid your cause, and an order hall tech tree where you research upgrades, we saw what seemed like a good fit for a version of the old mission gameplay to provide another outlet for leading the champions you've gathered and spending the order resources you've earned out in the world. But it is far more limited in scope and designed to be a much smaller piece of Legion than missions were in Warlords. It's serving a larger system rather than trying to stand alone as a system in and of itself. There are fewer followers champions, fewer less frequent missions, but more importantly, the system is more closely tied to the game world itself. Order resources come from playing the game normally and will come primarily from doing world quests at max level. If you get a raid mission, it won't give you a piece of raid loot directly. It will give you a quest to kill a specific boss in that zone in exchange for a bonus piece of loot. In general, from the ground up, missions in Legion are not intended to be an alternate progression path or a self-contained activity. We don't think of them as content, but they are a useful additional outlet to complement core traditional content, such as dungeons, outdoor questing, and raids. We'll have more details to share in the future, but hopefully this helps clarify some of our broader goals and provide some context to what you may be seeing in-game. Now, before I continue on with my thoughts, let's see what else he has to say because he continues on. So let's go here. Some additional thoughts on the concerns that have been raised in this and other threads, loosely paraphrased. Don't you understand that no one likes missions? Why are you keeping any piece of the system? We understand that many players are unhappy with garrisons, and in particular with the prominence of follower missions in Warlords of Draenor. We're certainly not sitting around saying to ourselves, wow, everyone loves managing followers and doing missions. Let's just copy-paste this feature into our next expansion for an easy win. We agree that, especially in the long run, the balance of content and rewards between garrison missions and core world content was a big problem in Draenor. Players too often found themselves without much reason to bother with dungeons or outdoor content, possibly logging on to raid or PvP, and otherwise just checking in to collect mission rewards and send followers out on new ones. And after a little while of that, it's awfully easy for it to stop feeling like a proper MMO experience. We've tried to tackle this problem throughout our design of Legion. Now let's keep in mind, they didn't even know this was a problem until after they were full-blown working on Legion. We focused on replayable and varied outdoor world content and dungeon content as the heart and soul of the Legion endgame, and on reward systems that will support the continued relevance of those systems. But at the same time, there are people who do enjoy the mission minigame, and there are some positive elements, such as a bit of offline progression and the fun of looking forward to a reward waiting for you when you get home and log in. Not all aspects of the game are intended to appeal to all players. That's part of the challenge of creating a single game that is played by such a diverse audience with different preferences and play styles. But while garrison followers and missions were a substantial portion of the content in Warlords, Order Hall missions are probably more like 3% of Legion. I understand that there is a fair bit of cynicism, and there are some who are probably reading this right now and thinking that it's just a bunch of nice-sounding words trying to cover up our sinister plan of mission table supremacy. But even if we wanted to, we know that we can't hide anything here. Well before Legion is in anyone's hands, people will be experiencing the system in its entirety in beta and will be judged on that basis. But there's key player power at the bottom of the Order Hall tech tree. So isn't that gated behind missions? Actually, no. As I mentioned in my post in the Alpha forums, what players are seeing in Alpha right now lacks context, admittedly because we haven't provided much. The research you can initiate in your Order Hall to unlock various perks, culminating in a strong player power reward, requires order resources. Order resources are not in any way gained through missions. You gain order resources from quest content, from the one-time order campaign quest arc, from treasures around the world, and at max level from outdoor world quests. If anything, missions are more likely to serve as an outlet for excess resources once you have your research needs covered. The Order Hall campaign immediately has you do missions that take a day to complete. That sounds terrible. That's good feedback and definitely the sort of thing we may adjust. Let me try to explain the intent here. The core of the class order campaign is epic quest content that is custom to your class. If you're a Death Knight, you might be working to raise a new set of 4 horsemen who are powerful enough to stand against the Legion. As a mage, you may be investigating a plot that threatens to undo Dalaran from within, and so forth. That's what the order campaigns are. We start you on these chains during the level up experience, but they're intended to be a story that unfolds over time, complementing the game's level up and endgame progression. In Warlords, when we had the Garrison campaign quests, we presented a new one each week, but there was no real indication where the next step would come from, or how long you would have to wait in order to continue. This time around, we want to avoid having gaps where there's no quest in your log. Having occasional steps where we ask you to run a few missions with long completion times seemed like a more elegant way to do it, allowing us to weave in a bit of storytelling as opposed to just, hey, come back next week for the next step. I understand that most of the discussion is based on bits of information that emerged from the alpha, and I know that it's difficult to truly reassure you when you haven't yet seen the things I'm talking about firsthand. But hopefully trying to share our goals and philosophies, as well as acknowledging past missteps, we hear you really, can provide some guidance about where this system is going to end up when it's complete. I said at the beginning of the video that I'm not one that has a huge problem with the garrisons in Draenor. Now, let me make it clear. Did the way that the garrisons were made cause people not to go out in the world? Absolutely. And I'm one of those people. I was perfectly happy in my garrison because, for one reason, I felt like, for example, if I wanted to go out in the world and gather herbs or ore, the spawns were too low. And particularly in the jungle, having low spawn rates, having to do those rep grinds, and fighting over mobs and resources, it was a miserable experience. And that's why I have rarely gone back to the jungle except, to upgrade something. I don't go back because it's not a place that I feel is enjoyable. So I completely understand when people see the mission table and they feel the same thing. They would have preferred to go out in the world and do whatever. However, what they said is true. There are some people that enjoy the mission minigame. I have no problem clicking around for a few minutes if the reward that I'm getting, in my opinion, is worth, the effort for me spending those few minutes doing it. So I definitely understand where they're coming from because there are probably millions of people who don't mind it, who are quietly playing the game, that have opinions that differ from the vocal minority. Have they lost a lot of subs? Yes. Was Draenor the hit they thought that it would be? No. Have they admitted that? Yes. Would it be foolish for them to turn around and do the exact same thing in Legion? Hell yes. Is it possible that what we're seeing isn't everything, and maybe these garrison type order hall missions are only 3% of Legion? Yes. Reading this, my concern is not the mission table. My concern is not the order hall. My concern is the amount of a grind it's going to be to complete things. Like, for example, having something take a day to complete is one thing. But going down the bottom of that tree, you're talking a half a month to complete something for the research to be done. That's half of my subscription fee. I don't want to spend... Now, I understand that this is like an epic reward and it should take epic time, but keep in mind, by the time I get down to the bottom of the table of this tree, how many resources have I already done? And how many shits am I going to give to continue because it goes like 10, like the first one, I'm just using numbers here, but they double up almost in levels. So it's like 100, 200, 500, 1,000, 2,000, 4,000, 5,000, you know, that kind of thing. So when you get down to the bottom, how long is it going to take realistically to come up with 10,000, 15,000 resources? How many quests am I going to have to go on? These are the things that I want to know, because if you don't do it, let's put it like this. I'm not going to like that grind, whether you put it in a mission table or you're forcing me to continually go out into the world to gather these resources. You see what I'm saying? To me, that's not content per se. It's just the same as your level up content. Go kill this, go kill that, 10 of these wolves, then go kill the brother wolves, then the sister wolves, then the mama wolf, then the papa wolf, then the grandmama wolf, you know? I mean, it's the same kind of thing. And that is just as much of a problem, in my opinion, as people having an issue with the garrison table, you know, the mission tables. So I'm more worried about that. And I'm hoping that the jungle type experience, where something as, okay, I'm just going to put it out here, flying. When I get in the Legion, day one, I expect to be able to go to my achievement list and see exactly what I need to complete the flying achievement so I can fly around. Okay? Day one. Not patch one, day one. Now, I'm not saying that I'll be able to unlock everything that it takes to do that. I'm not saying that. I'm trying to compromise here. What I'm saying is that I better not have to go back through the freaking zone again. You see what I'm saying? When I go through the zone that first time, I want to be able to do everything that I need to do, check it off the list, move on to the next thing. I have multiple characters. I don't want to hate going through the area again to progress my character. I hated the jungle so much. I've only completed that on one toon. That's it. I just, there's just no way I'm going to do that. So those are the type of concerns that I have right now. Putting in writing that the Order mission halls are probably 3% of Legion, I will give them the benefit of the doubt and say, okay, let's be, you know, on the conservative side, let's say it's 10% of Legion. I'm cool with that. I'm cool with that. But I'm concerned about the grinds that we saw and, you know, the reputation grinds, what's coming up with that. So what I suggest is that we just, I mean, I can't tell you what to do. And I know that you don't get what you want by having an emotional temper tantrum. Chill. Sit back and wait. Because as a player, whether you want to believe it or not, you're in control. It's your money. You don't have to spend it. You know, if you spend it, then whine like a little bitch, then whose fault is that? Okay? So just chill and wait and see what's coming. I honestly would not start forming hard opinions on anything until beta, when the majority of the content is in and you can make an informed decision about it. At this point, it's alpha and things are going to change. You can't, well, okay, you can, because in this world, you can be stupid, you can be ignorant, you can say silly things, you can, we're seeing that, you can do it, but there is a repercussion for everything that you do. Whether you want to believe it or not, that there is. There is. So if you have this emotional reaction without having all of the information, you're not helping anything. If you really want to make a point about how disgusted you are, unsub. It's just stop playing. If you're giving any game company, and I'm not saying this only about Blizzard, I'm saying this about any game company, the more you give them your money, you can complain all day, but at the end of the day, they're getting paid. Your actions of paying them has far more weight than the little words you say about not liking this or that. You have to back up your words with action. Unsub. Don't play. don't make videos. You see what I'm saying? That will get their attention. And I'm not trying to tell people to mass leave. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that if it really bothers you that much, step up your game. And as I said, this is for any game. I say this, I went through this with EVE Online. I kept waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting for them to make a game that I felt happy to log in to. And then at some point, I accepted the fact that I wasn't their target audience. And even though my channel, because I was so passionate about that game, was completely like an EVE Online channel, I walked away. Did my channel take a hit? Of course it did. But in the end, my morals and ethics are what's going to keep me happy. And I'm not going to let a developer, what I felt, walk all over me at that time. I wasn't going to do that. So I practice what I preach. I'm not saying this from the standpoint of, you should do it, but I won't. I will. If I don't like what I see, I'll walk away from a game in a heartbeat. It was hard with EVE. It was like breaking up with your husband for me, like a divorce. But I did it. And now that I've done it, I feel a freedom of not being like married to a game where you're stuck, where you have an unrealistic expectation for what the game is going to be. And the worst lie, I'm telling you, the worst lie that you can ever tell are the ones that you tell to yourself. So my opinion on this, as a summary, just chill. Wait and see what's coming out. Now that this is in, I will hop into Legion's Alpha and start playing through it and showing gameplay of it and trying to give an honest, non-emotional take on it so that you can make an informed decision for yourself. And hopefully you guys will be able to, get into beta and see it for yourself, But until then, let's just enjoy life. It's a game. Enjoy life. Hug your kids. Get a quickie with your spouse. Have a drink, Go outside and smell the roses. Hopefully there's no snow in your area. But you know what I'm saying? There are so many things to be grateful for in this world. Don't let the possible aggravation of something that you don't even know what is, take the enjoyment out of your life. And if in the event, this mission table class order hall thing ends up being like garrisons, it's okay to walk away. So that's it for this one. Thank you for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one.